I stood in the middle of my grandson Tyler's wedding reception, the chandelier lights sparkling above me like stars, with my hand in his as the opening notes of our special song filled the ballroom. The look on everyone's face, especially my daughter Linda's, was worth every single second of agony, every drop of sweat, every tear I'd cried in secret over the past 18 months. They told me I'd never walk again. Linda stood there with her mouth hanging open, her husband Doug beside her looking like he'd seen a ghost. My son Marcus was filming on his phone, tears streaming down his face. But it was Tyler's smile, that beautiful 24-year-old's joy-filled grin, that made my heart soar as we began to move together across that dance floor. You see, 18 months ago I wasn't supposed to survive at all. The accident that changed everything happened on a Tuesday afternoon in March. I was walking back from the grocery store, just 2 blocks from my house, when a distracted driver ran a red light. I don't remember the impact. I don't remember the ambulance ride or the first 3 days in the hospital. What I do remember is waking up in the ICU with my children around my bed, and the look on Linda's face that told me everything had changed. My name is Evelyn Richardson, and I'm 72 years old. Before the accident, I was one of those seniors who refused to act my age. I took dance classes twice a week, ballroom and Latin. I volunteered at the community center teaching kids to read. I walked everywhere, kept my house spotless, and prided myself on my independence. My husband Robert died 6 years ago, and while I missed him every single day, I'd built a life I was proud of. I had 2 children, Linda, who's 48, and Marcus, who's 45. 3 grandchildren. A small but comfortable house that Robert and I had paid off 20 years earlier. I wasn't wealthy, but I was content. The accident shattered my pelvis, broke my spine in 2 places, fractured both legs, and caused internal bleeding that required 3 surgeries in the first week alone. The doctors said I was lucky to be alive. Linda said I was lucky to have family to take care of me. At the time, lying in that hospital bed, unable to move anything below my chest without screaming in pain, I believed her. Dr. Chun, my primary surgeon, was a kind man with gentle hands and an honest face. He sat beside my bed 2 weeks after the accident and explained my prognosis in terms I could understand. The spinal damage was significant. The pelvic fractures were complex. My age was a factor. Even with extensive physical therapy, he said, I might never regain full mobility. Walking was a possibility, he said carefully, but I shouldn't set my expectations too high. Linda was there for that conversation. She nodded along, asked questions about care requirements, about what kind of assistance I'd need. She held my hand and told me not to worry, that she and Doug had plenty of room in their house, that they'd take care of everything. I was so grateful. I squeezed her hand and thanked her through my tears. I had no idea what I was agreeing to. Marcus lived 3 hours away with his wife Jennifer and their 2 teenage daughters. He visited every weekend, but his job as an engineer made it impossible for him to be there full-time. Linda was local, worked from home as a consultant, and presented herself as the obvious choice for my primary caregiver. I moved into their house 6 weeks after the accident, once I was stable enough to leave the hospital. Their home was a large colonial in the suburbs with 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. Linda and Doug's master suite was on the 2nd floor, along with their daughter Stephanie's room, though Stephanie was away at college. Their son Bryce, my grandson, still lived at home at 19, but he had his own space in the finished basement. They set me up in the 1st floor guest room, right off the kitchen, with an adjoining bathroom that had been retrofitted with grab bars and a shower chair. The first month was bearable. I was in so much pain that I barely noticed the small indignities. Linda brought me meals on a tray. She helped me in and out of bed. She managed my medications and drove me to my doctor's appointments and physical therapy sessions 3 times a week. I felt like a burden, but I told myself it was temporary. Dr. Chun said 6 months of intensive therapy, maybe a year, and I might regain enough function to live independently again. But somewhere around week 6 things started to change. Little things at first. Linda stopped bringing my meals on time. Breakfast would come at 10 instead of 8, lunch at 3 instead of noon. When I mentioned being hungry, she'd sigh and say she was busy, that I needed to be patient. The physical therapy appointments started being canceled. The first time, Linda said she had a work meeting she'd forgotten about. The second time, she had to take Bryce somewhere. The third time, she didn't offer an excuse at all. just called and canceled while I sat in my room, already dressed and ready to go. I called Marcus and told him I was worried. He said he'd talk to Linda. When he did, she apparently told him I was being ungrateful and demanding, that she was doing her best under difficult circumstances, that caregiving was harder than anyone understood. Marcus called me back and gently suggested I try to be more flexible, that Linda was under a lot of stress. I felt ashamed. I tried harder to be grateful, to not complain, to accept whatever care was offered whenever it was offered. Physical therapy was the key to any hope of recovery, and I knew it. The therapist, a wonderful woman named Angela, had created a detailed program for me. Exercises to strengthen my core, to rebuild the muscles that supported my damaged spine, to gradually restore flexibility to my shattered pelvis. In the hospital and the first weeks at Linda's house, I'd worked with Angela 3 times a week for hour-long sessions. I'd also been given exercises to do at home, every single day, to maintain progress between the professional sessions. But as the appointments got canceled, my progress stalled. And the home exercises became nearly impossible. You see, many of them required space to move, equipment like resistance bands and small weights, and someone to help me with positioning and safety. Linda had promised to help me with the home program. She'd nodded seriously when Angela explained everything, had taken the printed instruction sheets, had even bought the resistance bands Angela recommended. But when I asked her to help me with the exercises, she was always too busy. In the morning, she had work calls. In the afternoon, she had errands. In the evening, she was making dinner or tired from her day. I tried doing them alone, but within 5 minutes of struggling to position myself on the floor, I'd be in so much pain I could barely breathe. Once I tried anyway, determined to push through. I managed 3 of the exercises before my back spasmed so badly I couldn't get up. I lay on the floor of my room for 45 minutes, calling for Linda, before she finally came to check on me. "For God's sake, Mom," she said, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. "What are you doing on the floor?" "I was trying to do my exercises," I said, tears running down my temples into my hair. "I can't get up. Can you help me?" She sighed, one of those deep dramatic sighs that made it clear what an imposition I was. She called for Doug, and between the 2 of them, they hauled me back onto my bed. Every movement sent lightning bolts of agony through my pelvis and spine. I bit my lip to keep from crying out, but I couldn't stop the tears. "You can't be doing that alone," Doug said, and his voice was kind. He was always kinder than Linda. "You could hurt yourself worse." "That's what I've been telling her," Linda said. "But she doesn't listen." "I need to do the exercises," I said, my voice shaking. The therapist said. "The therapist doesn't have to deal with you lying on the floor unable to get up," Linda interrupted. "You're going to have to accept that some things just aren't possible anymore, Mom. You're not 25. You had a serious accident. Maybe it's time to adjust your expectations." The words hit me like a physical blow. Adjust my expectations. I'd heard Dr. Chan say something similar, but from him it was a medical opinion, a realistic assessment. From Linda it felt like giving up. Like she'd decided my fate without my input, had already written the story of how my recovery would end. After that, I stopped asking for help with the exercises. I did what I could while lying in bed: arm raises, ankle flexions, breathing exercises. But the crucial ones, the ones Angela said were most important for regaining the ability to walk, went undone. I felt myself getting weaker instead of stronger. My muscles atrophied. My joints stiffened. In physical therapy, Angela would ask about my home program, and I'd lie and say I was doing my best. She'd look at me with concern and say that my progress wasn't where it should be, that we needed to increase the frequency of our sessions if possible. But the sessions kept getting canceled. By month 4, I was lucky if I saw Angela once a week. Sometimes 2 weeks would go by between appointments. I'd hear Linda on the phone with the therapy office. "I'm so sorry, something came up. We have a family emergency. My mother isn't feeling well today." That last one was the cruelest, because she'd say it while standing right outside my door, never having asked me how I felt. Meanwhile, my presence in Linda's house was increasingly treated as an inconvenience. Doug would come home from work and I'd hear him and Linda talking in the kitchen while I sat in my room. The door didn't close all the way, and their voices carried. "How much longer is this going to go on?" Doug asked one evening. "I don't know," Linda said, and she sounded exhausted. The doctors can't give me a timeline. She's not getting any better. Maybe we need to look at other options. Like what? Marcus sure isn't stepping up. And I can't just abandon her. I'm not saying abandon her. But there are facilities, Linda. Places with trained staff who can provide round-the-clock care. This is taking a toll on you. On us. I know. I feel guilty even thinking about it. She's my mother. Facilities. They were talking about putting me in a nursing home. I was 72, not 92. I'd been independent 6 months ago. I'd been dancing. And now my daughter was discussing nursing homes because physical therapy was inconvenient to her schedule. I started sleeping poorly, lying awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering what would become of me. My house, my and Robert's house, was still sitting empty. Marcus had suggested renting it out, but I'd refused. It was my home. I wanted to go back there. But every day that I grew weaker instead of stronger, going home seemed less possible. Then Tyler called me. My grandson, Marcus's son, who I'd always been close with. He was getting married in a year, he said excitedly, to his girlfriend Emily, who I'd met several times and adored. They were planning a fall wedding. And he wanted to know if I'd be there, if I'd dance with him at the reception like we'd always talked about. Tyler loved to dance. When he was little, he'd stand on my feet while I waltzed around my living room, both of us laughing. As he got older, I'd taught him proper steps, and he'd been my partner at family weddings for years. At his high school graduation party, we danced together while everyone watched and clapped. At my wedding, he'd told me then, "You're getting the first dance after Emily. Promise." I'd promised. And now, lying in a bed in Linda's house with my body broken and weak, with my daughter talking about nursing homes and my physical therapy appointments being canceled, that promise felt like a cruel joke. Of course I'll be there, I told Tyler, fighting to keep my voice steady. I wouldn't miss it for the world. And we'll dance, he asked. I've already told Emily I'm saving that first dance for my grandma. My throat closed up. I couldn't speak for a moment. Finally I managed. I'll do everything I can to make that happen, sweetheart. After we hung up, I cried. Not the quiet tears I'd shed before, but deep gasping sobs that shook my whole body and sent spikes of pain through my damaged spine. I cried for what I'd lost, for what I was losing, for the future that was slipping away while I lay helpless in a house where I was treated as a burden. And then, somewhere in the midst of that despair, something hardened in me. Something that had been soft and grateful and passive crystallized into determination. Tyler wanted to dance with me at his wedding. I'd promised. And I'd be damned if I let Linda's neglect and my own weakness steal that moment from us. The next morning I called Angela directly. I'd only ever spoken to her during our sessions, but her card had her direct number on it. She answered on the third ring. "Angela, this is Evelyn Richardson," I said. "I need to talk to you about my treatment." "Of course, Evelyn. What's going on?" "I need to be honest with you. I haven't been doing my home exercises because I can't do them alone. And my daughter doesn't have time to help me. And my appointments keep getting canceled. I'm getting weaker instead of stronger, and I need to know, is it too late? Can I still recover? Or have I missed my window? If you're finding this story resonating with you, I'd love for you to subscribe and share your own experiences in the comments. These stories matter because they remind us we're not alone in our struggles. There was a long pause. Then Angela said gently, "It's not too late, Evelyn. But I'm not going to lie to you. Every week that goes by without proper therapy makes it harder. Your body is capable of remarkable healing, but it needs support and consistent work. What you're describing concerns me. You should be coming 3 times a week minimum, and you should be doing the home program daily." "My daughter is overwhelmed," I said, trying to be fair. "She has a lot on her plate." "I understand that caregiving is difficult," Angela said carefully. "But there are options. We have a program where therapists can come to the home for sessions. Insurance usually covers it. Would that help?" Home sessions, where Linda couldn't cancel appointments without it being obvious to the therapist that I was ready and willing. Where I could work with Angela in my room with proper support every day if needed. "Yes," I said. "That would help tremendously." "Let me make some calls," Angela said. "I'll get this set up, and I'll call you back with a schedule." "Evelyn." "Yes. Don't give up. I've seen patients with injuries like yours regain mobility. Takes work and it takes time, but it's possible. You have to believe that. I hung up feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope? When Linda found out about the home therapy sessions, she was furious. Angela had called the house to confirm the schedule, and Linda had answered. 3 times a week, 1-hour sessions starting Monday. Linda came into my room with her phone still in her hand, her face flushed. What did you do? She demanded. I arranged for physical therapy at home, I said calmly. Since it's so hard for you to drive me to appointments, I thought this would be easier. You thought? You didn't think to discuss this with me? It's my therapy, Linda. My recovery. It's my house. And now I have to deal with therapists coming in and out 3 times a week. You don't have to deal with anything. They'll work with me in my room. You won't even know they're here. She stared at me and I saw something in her face I'd never seen before. Something that looked almost like resentment. I've been taking care of you for months, she said, her voice low. Everything I've done has been for you. And this is the thanks I get? Going behind my back. I'm not trying to be ungrateful. You have no idea how hard this has been. No idea what I've sacrificed. And you're treating me like I'm some kind of villain. Linda, I just need physical therapy. That's all this is. She turned and walked out without another word, slamming the door behind her. The home therapy session started the following Monday. Angela came herself for the first session, along with a colleague named Ramon who would be handling some of the sessions when Angela wasn't available. They brought equipment, set up a space in my room, and for the first time in months I received proper, consistent professional care. It was excruciating. Those first sessions showed me just how much strength and flexibility I'd lost. Exercises that should have been easy left me shaking and sweating. My range of motion had decreased dramatically. Angela's face was professionally neutral, but I could see the concern in her eyes. We have a lot of work to do, she said after that first session. But we're going to do it. I need you to commit to this, Evelyn. Not just during our sessions but every day. We'll modify the home program so you can do parts of it independently, and we'll work on the rest together. Deal. Deal, I said. Over the next weeks, something remarkable happened. With consistent therapy, my body began to remember what it was capable of. The pain didn't go away, it was a constant companion, but it became manageable. My muscles began to rebuild. My flexibility slowly increased. Angela brought in parallel bars and I started practicing standing while holding on to them. Just standing, supporting my own weight for 30 seconds at a time, was a victory that made me cry. Linda barely spoke to me during this time. She'd leave my meals outside my door. She stopped asking how I was feeling. When Angela or Ramon were there, Linda would disappear into other parts of the house. The tension was palpable, but I was too focused on my recovery to care. Marcus called me one evening, his voice tight. Linda says you're being difficult, he said. That you went behind her back with the therapy, that you're making things harder for her. I arranged for therapists to come here so she wouldn't have to drive me, I said. How is that making things harder? She feels like you don't trust her to take care of you. Marcus, she wasn't taking care of me. She was canceling my appointments. I wasn't getting therapy. She says she had good reasons. I'm sure she does. But my recovery can't wait for her schedule to clear up. I need this, Marcus. I need to get better. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Linda mentioned that you're not making progress anyway. That maybe you need to accept that this is as good as it's going to get. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Linda said that? She's worried about you having false hope, Mom. She doesn't want you to be disappointed. Is that what she's worried about? Or is she worried that I might actually get better, and she'll lose her excuse for why she's treated me the way she has? That's not fair. Isn't it? Marcus, when was the last time you saw me? Not talk to me on the phone, actually saw me? It's been a few weeks. Work has been crazy. Come see me, I said. Come this weekend. Spend an hour with me. Watch me work with Angela. And then you tell me whether I should give up. He came that Saturday. I'd arranged for Angela to do my session while Marcus was there. I wanted him to see what I was doing, what I was fighting for. When he arrived, Linda greeted him at the door, and I could hear them talking in low voices in the hallway. Then he came into my room, and I saw his face change when he saw me. I'd lost weight. My face was thinner, older looking. But I was sitting up in a chair instead of lying in bed, and I was dressed in workout clothes instead of pajamas. Angela had brought a new set of parallel bars that were taller and more stable, and I'd been practicing walking between them. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, smiling at him. "Mom," he said, and his voice cracked. "You look like hell," I said wryly. "I know, but watch this." With Angela's help, I stood up from the chair. Marcus moved forward like he wanted to help, but Angela held up a hand, stopping him. I shuffled over to the parallel bars, gripped them with both hands, and began to walk. Step, step, step. Slow, unsteady, each movement requiring total concentration. My legs shook. Sweat broke out on my forehead. But I walked the length of the bars 8 feet, turned around, and walked back. When I sank back into the chair, breathing hard, I looked up at Marcus. Tears were streaming down his face. "You're walking," he whispered. "I'm walking," I confirmed. "Not well. Not far. But I'm walking, Marcus. And I'm going to keep getting better." He knelt beside my chair and took my hand. "I had no idea. Linda said you were bedridden, that you weren't making any progress." "Linda hasn't asked about my progress in months," I said quietly. "She doesn't come in here when Angela is here. She doesn't know what I'm doing because she hasn't bothered to look." Angela, sensing this was a family moment, excused herself to get some equipment from her car. As soon as she was gone, Marcus said, "Mom, what's going on? Linda seems so angry. And you seem different." "I'm fighting for my life," I said simply. "Not my survival, the doctors already managed that. But my life, my independence, my future. And Linda has made it clear that she'd prefer I accept being an invalid. It's easier for her if I stay in this bed, if I need her, if I'm helpless. But I'm not helpless, Marcus. I'm hurt, and I'm healing, and I need people around me who believe I can get better." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I can't stay here much longer. Linda resents me, and that resentment is poisoning both of us. I need to go home." "Home? Mom, your house isn't set up for your needs. There are stairs. The bathroom can be modified. Marcus, people make their homes accessible all the time. Ramps, grab bars, a hospital bed if I need one. It can be done. But you'd be alone. What if something happened? I have a phone. I have neighbors. And I'd rather be alone in my own house than be a burden in Linda's." He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it again. Finally he said, "Let me think about this. Let me talk to Jennifer. We'll figure something out." 2 weeks later, Marcus came back with a plan. He and Jennifer had researched everything: home modifications, accessibility equipment, visiting nurse services, meal delivery programs. They'd gotten estimates from contractors. They'd talked to an occupational therapist about what I'd need. And they'd made a decision. They would help me move home, they would pay for the modifications, and they would hire someone to check on me daily until I was steady enough to be fully independent. "You're not doing this alone," Marcus said firmly. "But if you want to go home, we'll make it happen." When we told Linda, her reaction was telling. "You're not ready," she said immediately. "Mom, you're making a mistake. You need more care than you can manage alone." "I won't be alone," I said. "Marcus has arranged for help." Marcus lives 3 hours away. He has no idea what day-to-day care involves. Neither do you apparently, since you haven't been providing it. Her face went red. "How dare you? After everything I've done." "What have you done, Linda?" I asked, and my voice was steady. "You gave me a room. You brought me food when you remembered. You canceled my therapy appointments and told everyone I wasn't making progress. You talked about putting me in a nursing home. You resented every moment I was here. So tell me, what exactly have you done besides provide a bed?" "That's so unfair," she said, but her voice wavered. "I turned my life upside down for you." "No," I said quietly. "You let me live in your house, and you held it over my head every single day. That's not care, Linda. That's obligation and resentment, and I won't live under that weight anymore." The move happened 3 weeks later. Marcus took time off work and drove down with a small truck. Doug, to his credit, helped with the heavy lifting and wished me well. Linda stayed in her bedroom the entire time. As I was being wheeled out to the car, I still needed a wheelchair for longer distances. She appeared at the top of the stairs. "You're going to fail," she called down. "You're going to fall or hurt yourself, and you're going to end up in a nursing home anyway. This is a mistake." I looked up at her, this woman I'd raised, this daughter I'd loved and sacrificed for, and said, "Then it's my mistake to make. Goodbye, Linda." My house felt like a sanctuary. Yes, it was different now. There was a ramp leading to the front door, grab bars in the bathroom, a hospital bed in what used to be Robert's study. But it was mine. My furniture, my memories, my space. Marcus had arranged for a visiting nurse named Patricia to come every morning and evening, just to check on me and help with anything I couldn't manage alone. Angela continued the home therapy sessions 3 times a week. And slowly, day by day, I got stronger. The work was brutal. There were days when the pain was so intense I wanted to quit. Days when I'd try to stand and my legs would give out, and I'd end up on the floor, crying from frustration as much as pain. But Patricia would help me up, and Angela would modify the exercises, and I'd try again. Because quitting wasn't an option. I had a promise to keep. 6 months after I moved back home, I could walk through my house using just a cane. My steps were slow and careful, but I could get from my bedroom to the kitchen, from the living room to the bathroom without help. I could stand long enough to make myself simple meals. I could get in and out of the shower using the grab bars and the shower chair. I wasn't who I'd been before the accident, but I was functional. I was independent. And I kept practicing. Not just the physical therapy exercises, but dancing. Using the parallel bars Angela had left for me, I practiced the basic waltz steps I'd done 1,000 times before. Step together step. Step together step. It was clumsy at first, my legs refusing to remember the pattern. But gradually muscle memory returned. The rhythm came back. I'd put on music, old standards, the same songs Robert and I used to dance to. And I'd hold the bars and move, tears streaming down my face, my body screaming in protest, my heart soaring with determination. Marcus visited every 2 weeks. He'd bring his family, and we'd have dinner together in my little house. Jennifer would cook, or we'd order in, and we'd sit around my table like a real family. Tyler would update me on the wedding plans. The venue was booked, the invitations were designed. Emily's dress was being altered. And he'd always ask, "Are you coming, Grandma? Are we dancing?" And I'd always answer, "Yes, sweetheart. We're dancing." 8 months after leaving Linda's house, I graduated from a cane to walking short distances independently. I could stand for 10 minutes at a time without support. I could take the few steps from my chair to the bookshelf without holding on to anything. Angela was amazed by my progress. "I've never seen anyone your age with your injuries recover like this," she said. "What you've done is remarkable, Evelyn." "I had a reason," I said simply. "I had something worth fighting for." 10 months after leaving Linda's house, I danced. Not holding parallel bars, not taking tiny shuffle steps, but actually danced. Angela had started bringing a portable speaker to our sessions, and we'd been working on the specific movements I'd need for a slow dance, turning, sidestepping, maintaining balance while in close hold with a partner. Ramon, Angela's colleague, volunteered to be my practice partner. He was about Tyler's height and build, and we'd practice in my living room, moving slowly through the basic waltz pattern. The first time we made it through an entire song without me having to stop, I burst into tears. Ramon hugged me gently and said, "You're going to make your grandson so happy." I didn't tell Tyler what I was doing. I didn't tell Marcus, though I think he suspected when he saw how much stronger I was getting. I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted that moment at the wedding to be something no one expected. Linda and I barely spoke during those months. She'd called once, about 2 months after I'd moved out, to ask how I was doing. The conversation was stilted and brief. She didn't apologize. I didn't press. We were both just going through the motions of a relationship that had broken somewhere along the way. When Marcus told me that Linda and Doug had RSVP'd yes to Tyler's wedding, my stomach tightened with anxiety, but I told myself it didn't matter. This wasn't about Linda. This was about Tyler and me and a promise I'd made. 2 weeks before the wedding, I went shopping with Jennifer for a dress. I hadn't been clothes shopping in almost 2 years, and standing in the dressing room, looking at myself in the mirror was surreal. I was thinner than I'd been, and there were lines in my face that hadn't been there before. My posture was different. I stood a little stooped, protecting my spine. But I was standing, by myself, looking at dresses. We found a beautiful blue gown, tea-length with a modest neckline and 3/4 sleeves. It was elegant without being flashy, and it had enough structure to help support my posture. Jennifer cried when I stepped out of the dressing room wearing it. "Evelyn," she said, "you look beautiful. Tyler is going to lose his mind." The night before the wedding I barely slept. I was terrified that something would go wrong, that my body would fail me at the crucial moment, that I'd gotten Tyler's hopes up only to disappoint him. But when I woke up that wedding day morning, my body felt strong. Ready. Patricia came by to help me get ready, doing my hair and makeup, helping me into my dress. When I looked in the mirror, I saw someone I recognized. Not the woman I'd been before the accident, but not the broken invalid either. Someone new. Someone who'd fought her way back. Marcus picked me up an hour before the ceremony. When he saw me, he stopped in the doorway and just stared. "Mom," he finally said, "you look incredible." "I clean up okay," I said, smiling. Are you able to dance? We'll see. But I'm going to try. The wedding was beautiful. Emily was a radiant bride, and Tyler was so handsome in his tuxedo that I cried through the entire ceremony. The reception was at a country club with a gorgeous ballroom and a live band. I sat at the family table with Marcus and Jennifer and their daughters. Linda and Doug were at the next table over. Linda kept glancing at me with an expression I couldn't read, surprised maybe that I'd made it at all, that I looked as good as I did. After the first dance, Tyler and Emily moving together like they were the only two people in the world, the band announced the next dance. Tyler came to my table, bent down, and extended his hand. "May I have this dance, Grandma?" The whole room went silent. Everyone knew about my accident, about my injuries. Everyone assumed I was in a wheelchair, or at best walking with assistance. Linda's mouth fell open. I could see her starting to stand, maybe to object, maybe to say I shouldn't try. I stood up. Without my cane. Without anyone's help. Just stood up from my chair and took Tyler's hand. "I would be honored," I said. The walk to the dance floor was the longest of my life. Every eye in that ballroom was on us. I could feel people holding their breath, waiting to see if I'd make it or if I'd fall. Tyler held my hand tightly, ready to catch me if I stumbled. But I didn't stumble. One step, another. Slow but steady. And then we were in the center of the dance floor, under the chandelier, and the band started playing. Tyler took me in proper dance hold. One hand in mine, one hand on my back. I placed my free hand on his shoulder. And we began to dance. It wasn't perfect. My steps were smaller than they used to be, my turn slower. I couldn't do any of the fancy moves we'd done at past family events. But we moved together through that basic waltz pattern. Step together, step, step together, step. And it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever experienced. Tyler was crying. I was crying. The entire room erupted in applause, but I barely heard it. All I heard was the music, and all I felt was joy. When the song ended, Tyler hugged me carefully and whispered, "You did it, Grandma. You actually did it." "I promised," I whispered back. "I always keep my promises to you." People crowded around us after that. Friends, family, guests I didn't even know, all wanting to tell me how inspiring I was, how amazing, how incredible. Marcus was openly sobbing. Jennifer kept hugging me. Even Doug came over, shook my hand and said, "That was remarkable, Evelyn." Linda was the last to approach. She stood there for a long moment just looking at me. Finally, she said, "I didn't think you could do it." "I know," I said. The doctors said it would be hard. They didn't say it was impossible. You're the one who decided I'd never walk again. You're the one who gave up on me. I was trying to protect you from disappointment." "No," I said quietly. "You were trying to make it easier for yourself. If I accepted being helpless, you didn't have to feel guilty about not helping me. But that's not how recovery works, Linda. It takes work and time and people who believe in you. You didn't believe in me." "That's not true." "It is true. And it's okay. I don't need you to apologize or even acknowledge it. But don't stand here and pretend you supported me, because we both know you didn't." She opened her mouth, closed it, then turned and walked away. I watched her go, feeling nothing but relief. That relationship was broken, maybe permanently. But standing there in my blue dress, still able to feel the echo of the dance in my legs, surrounded by people who'd actually supported my recovery, I found I didn't care. The rest of the evening was a celebration. I sat down to rest. Dancing had taken everything I had, but people kept coming over to talk to me, to hear my story. Tyler introduced me to Emily's grandparents, who were around my age, and we bonded over refusing to let age define us. The band played my favorite songs. Marcus gave a toast that made me cry again. Near the end of the night, Tyler came back and sat beside me. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not giving up. For fighting. For being here and dancing with me. Everyone kept telling me I needed to adjust my expectations, that I was being unrealistic. But you did it anyway." "I did it because you believed I could," I said. "When your mother and everyone else had written me off, you still asked if we'd dance. You gave me something to fight for, Tyler. So thank you." He hugged me again, holding on tight. Over his shoulder I could see Linda and Doug leaving. She didn't look back. In the weeks after the wedding, the video of our dance went viral. Someone had filmed it and posted it on social media. And suddenly millions of people were watching a 72-year-old woman dance at her grandson's wedding 18 months after an accident that should have left her paralyzed. The comments were overwhelming, thousands of people sharing their own stories of recovery, of being told they couldn't do something and doing it anyway, of fighting against the odds. News outlets reached out asking for interviews. I did a few, mainly to talk about the importance of physical therapy and never underestimating patients' potential for recovery. Angela and her therapy center got a flood of new clients. I got hundreds of letters and emails from people thanking me for inspiring them. But the best part wasn't the attention or the messages. It was the life I'd built for myself. I continued physical therapy, kept getting stronger. By the 1-year mark, I could walk a full block without getting tired. I started volunteering again at the community center. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my recovery. I filled my house with people and laughter and life. Linda reached out 6 months after the wedding. She called and asked if we could talk. I almost said no, but something made me agree. She came to my house, walked up my ramp, sat in my living room, held a cup of tea with shaking hands. "I owe you an apology," she said finally, "for how I treated you when you were staying with us, for not supporting your recovery, for giving up on you." "Yes," I said simply. "You do. I was overwhelmed. That's not an excuse, but it's the truth. When you came to live with us, I thought I could handle it. But seeing you so hurt, so helpless, it scared me. And I think part of me decided it was easier if you stayed that way. If you needed me. Because then I was important, I was needed, even if you were suffering." It was the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. I sat with it for a moment, then said, "That's a terrible reason to keep someone down." I know it is. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom." I looked at her, this complicated woman I'd raised, and felt something shift in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "But you need to understand what you did or didn't do. It broke something between us. I don't know if that can be fixed." "I know. But I want to try. If you'll let me. We're working on it. Slowly. Linda comes by once a month and we have lunch. The conversations are still sometimes stiff, still sometimes painful. But they're honest now. She asks about my therapy, about my life, and she actually listens to the answers. I'm not sure we'll ever be close the way we were before, but we're finding a new way to be mother and daughter. One built on honesty instead of obligation. Marcus and I are closer than ever. He calls twice a week, visits once a month. His daughters, my granddaughters, come and spend weekends with me. I teach them to bake, to garden, to stand up for themselves. I tell them my story not to brag, but to show them what's possible when you refuse to accept other people's limitations. And I dance. Not every day and not for long. But I put on music and I move through my living room, celebrating everything my body can do instead of mourning what it can't. I dance for myself, for Tyler, for every person who was told they'd never walk again and proved everyone wrong. The accident took a lot from me. My perfect health. My easy mobility. 18 months of my life. My relationship with my daughter, at least the relationship we used to have. But it gave me something too. It gave me proof of my own strength. It showed me who really supported me and who didn't. It taught me that I could overcome odds that seemed impossible, that age doesn't mean giving up, that promises are worth keeping even when they require everything you have. People ask me sometimes what I'd say to someone in a similar situation. Someone who's been injured, someone who's been told they'll never recover, someone whose family has given up on them. And I always say the same thing: don't believe them. Don't believe the people who say you can't or you won't or it's too late. Don't believe the family members who've decided your fate without your input. Don't believe the part of yourself that wants to give up because fighting is hard and painful and exhausting. Believe in your own strength instead. Find something worth fighting for, a promise to keep, a goal to reach, a dream to achieve. Find the people who believe in you and hold them close. Get the help you need even if you have to fight for it. And then do the work. Do it when it hurts. Do it when you're tired. Do it when everyone else has stopped watching because they've already written the end of your story. Because they don't get to write your story. You do. I wrote mine on a dance floor in a blue dress, in the arms of my grandson who never stopped believing I could. And it was worth every second of pain, every drop of sweat, every tear I cried in the dark. It was worth it because I proved to myself and everyone else that 72 isn't the end, that injuries don't have to be permanent, that never is just a word people use when they lack imagination. I walked. I danced. I kept my promise. And I'm not done yet. I still have physical therapy twice a week now, just for maintenance and continued improvement. Angela has become a friend as much as a therapist. We celebrate my victories together: the first time I walked up 3 stairs, the first time I stood for 20 minutes straight, the first time I went grocery shopping by myself. She tells me I'm her favorite success story, but I know the success belongs to both of us. She gave me the tools and the knowledge, but I did the work. My life isn't perfect. I have bad days where the pain is intense, where my body reminds me of every break and tear it sustained. I have limitations I didn't have before. I can't run, can't do high-impact activities, have to be careful with how I move. But I have my independence. I have my home. I have my dignity. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that when everything seemed lost, when everyone had counted me out, I fought my way back. Tyler and Emily come to visit often. They live about an hour away, and they stop by every few weeks for dinner. Tyler always asks me how the dancing is going, and sometimes after we eat, he'll put on music and we'll do a few turns around my living room. It's become our thing, our special connection, strengthened by what we went through to get to that moment at his wedding. Emily told me recently that they're expecting a baby, my first great-grandchild. She asked if I'd want to be involved, if I'd be able to help when the baby comes. I told her yes, absolutely yes. I'll be there to rock that baby, to sing lullabies, to pass down all the wisdom and strength I've learned. And someday when that child is old enough, I'll teach them to dance too. I'll tell them about their great-grandmother who was told she'd never walk again. And I'll show them that impossible is just a challenge waiting to be overcome. That's my legacy now. Not just the mother who raised 2 children, or the wife who loved her husband for 42 years, but the woman who refused to give up, who danced when everyone said she never would, who proved that age and injury and other people's expectations don't have to define you. I'm Evelyn Richardson. I'm 73 years old. I survived an accident that should have killed me, recovered from injuries that should have left me in a wheelchair for life, and danced at my grandson's wedding despite everyone saying I never would. And if I can do that, you can do whatever impossible thing you're facing too. You just have to believe it, find your reason, do the work, and refuse to quit. Trust me. I've been there. I've lived it. And I'm here to tell you. Never underestimate a grandmother's resolve. We're stronger than anyone gives us credit for. And we're not done surprising people yet.